I've got a fun system to play with today, and this is a older POS system. So this was designed to be used for cash registers, just uses where you're ringing up customers doing it. So this is a touchscreen here, and it's designed to be, so this is touchscreen's the only way you interface with it. It's not designed to have a keyboard or mouse, but you can. Lifting it up, it's a pretty hefty unit, metal construction on the back, pretty darn durable. You could tilt it. Let's see, branding and stuff. That's all metal though. Not too much else to look at. There's a little panel that covers it that I took off. But under that, you can go and see the I/O ports for the device. It's basically an all-in-one PC that's designed for this usage. So you can see it has a power input port, a Ethernet port, looks like that, but it says it's a cash drawer port. Line in and line out audio, 4 RJ45 serial ports, 4 USB ports, a parallel port, and a VGA output. So it's a full x86 PC in here. I've played with this guy a little bit before, and it has an Intel Atom in it. And it has a COA sticker for Windows POS Ready 7. So they've made a few embedded versions of Windows with slightly different licensing terms and different support periods and stuff. One famous example is POS Ready 2009, which is rebranded XP, but this is slightly newer, so it has the 7 version on it. And I'm just going to first of all just run Windows on it and see how it does. See what happens, measure power, and just kind of see how it goes. The unit didn't come with the drive, so I'm going to just slot a little drive in. It has a convenient little place where you can slide the drive into the bottom here. So I've plugged it in right now to a keyboard and mouse, the power, and a external hard drive that I can use to be as a bootable medium to install an OS from. I also have it measuring power using a kilowatt meter. Right now it's pulling 1.6 watts, which is about normal for a shutdown PC, a bit on the high side though. The power button is actually right here on the bottom, relatively easy to get at if you know where it is, but you can't accidentally press it. Just how they'd want it to be. Turning it on, shoots up to like 20 watts. And look at that. That is a just standard BIOS. It's kind of weird seeing these like embedded systems with full BIOSes, because I kind of expect them to be wanting some really weird embedded stuff. But taking a look at the hardware, you can see screen does something weird here. Doesn't seem to be pressure related though. Date's all set right. 4 gigs of RAM. I believe is actually, I did a bit of Googling on this chip, is the highest you can get for this chip. D525, 1.8 gigahertz dual core, hyper-threaded, made in 2010. So this is a pretty old system. See, the BIOS is a little bit newer than that though. Single chip. And due to the Intel Atom CPUs being kind of a lower tier than the traditional core ones, this is a lot slower than a standard like 1.8 gigahertz Ultrabook would be. So this is not going to be a fast system. It's also still older. We can look in its configuration. You can see, like, there's not too much, like, speed steps off. I haven't touched any of this here. You'd see it detected my hard drive. Oh, it looks like it's running as a IDE version. That's interesting. Yeah, looking through power configuration, a lot of COM ports, PCI Express. I believe this is running on integrated graphics, but we'll find out. Plug and play. I'm not an expert in IRQs and DMA channels. It has network boot support if you want to use that. Security, not set up anything. Northbridge configuration. Yeah, you can set that up. DRAM frequency. Yeah, it looks like it's using the integrated graphics with 8 megs of VRAM. Or, no, it looks like 256. And Southbridge configuration, so USB 2 with 10 USB ports. It's interesting. I'm curious what that option does. A few more just enable, disable PCIe ports. I haven't looked inside. I'm going to try to take a peek in here if I can get at it without destroying it. Yeah, and I don't think I made any changes. So I'm going to discharge changes and exit. And I'm going to tell it to boot. So this SSD has another Windows 7 install. Being a 32-bit system, I'm going to have to pay a little bit more attention to versions because I've gotten so used to everything as 64-bit these days. So I'm going to get into the boot screen menu now. Going to pick my virtual CD-ROM, pick select any key, and I'm going to pick the 32-bit Windows 10 setup. It's just kind of weird to see it's a weird all-in-one, because I think it's just an all-in-one PC, but it has a touchscreen. It'll be fun to play with Windows 10, which was kind of designed for touchscreens on it. Seems to be loading the Windows installer just fine. I'm guessing it'll install correctly. I'll give it a few minutes. And one note on power consumption, looking at power usage, it's about 28 watts right now. Still feels cold. There's not many vents on it. We'll find out if it has a fan in a little bit once I open it up. That felt like a fairly slow installation of Windows 10 to me, and I've done a lot of Windows 10 installs, so... And I don't think it's the drive, so we'll find out and poke a little bit more at it. First thing, something feels weird with the screen. I don't know how well you can tell on camera, but it feels a bit yellowed. From my knowledge, yellowing of screens on LCDs is often due to the polarizer damage. Fairly common on projectors, not super common on LCD screens. Might be due to heat. I'm not exactly sure the conditions this unit was in. Yeah, that does not look very white. Either like screen set, and it doesn't seem to be even either. Oh, we see tearing moving in Task Manager, and also the CPU somehow being maxed out. I did plug it into the network, so it can reach out on the network. It has 4 gigs of RAM, but due to how Windows 32-bit works, you can only use 3.3 of those gigs, so it says 3 gigs is usable. It's setting up a lot of drivers now, installing drivers. Does it actually... The touchscreen doesn't work yet. It says that 1 gig of hardware reserved. It's still maxing out my CPU. And the Intel Arc page was right about it being a 4-thread CPU. Taking a look at sensors to see what's happening. The CPU is sitting at 1.16 volts. These don't need a lot of voltage. You can see clock speed bounces around a tiny bit. Virtual memory. Temperatures. I haven't really been pushing it. It's been sitting on 100% load, pulling 33 watts total on the system. And we're sitting at 26 Celsius, which almost seems low compared to the temperatures I'm just feeling on the back, but I don't know exactly where the core is. GPU clock, this is not a fast GPU on here either. There you go, this seems more right. The motherboard is a, CPU's 37 Celsius, and the motherboard's 50 Celsius, or 47, which seems a lot more right. And if you look at this motherboard at 40 Celsius, these numbers all seem a lot more accurate than the internal one. Drive's at 45 Celsius. Yeah, Realtek NIC drive, no errors it's found. Let's look at a few things with CPU performance. So here's CPU benchmark from Passmark. Not a great benchmark, but reasonably good for telling differences in performance. Let's look at maybe like a i7-3667U. This is what I have in an older MacBook Air. It's from 2013, I believe. It's an Ivy Bridge chip, 2 gigahertz, with turbo booster, so it runs about 3. This is 2500 points, so that's almost 5 times faster than this system. Let's go back to like a E6600 benchmark, so kind of the original Core 2 Duos. That's still almost twice as fast. How bad, like if we do like a Pentium D965, that was a fairly high end, that would be the top of the line Pentium D that was ever made. We see, oh, that's still faster. Okay, this CPU benchmark seems to love those Pentium Ds, or there's something weird. If we do like a Pentium 4631 CPU benchmark, this was a fairly common Pentium 4 in its day, a little bit slower. These are still showing how a CPU from about 2004, 2005 high-end was almost the same speed as this system. So it's kind of, these Pentium 4s were optimized for performance, and things like thermals, die size, cost suffered for it. Whereas this Atom chip was designed for power savings and cost first, and then performance second. And that's definitely showing. Unfortunately, I haven't seemed to get my touchscreens to work. I wanted to play with my touchscreen on here. So now I'm going to try installing Debian. So I'm booted into the 32-bit live net install disk for Debian. Weird issue with Debian on this thing. I don't know if it crashes during boot up. Doesn't appear to, because numlock and caps lock doesn't work though, but numlock does. And it just uses a continual low amount of power. That's not a good sign. So I'm going to shut it down. You saw that screen blink on. Now it's in its shutdown stage. We're going to try turning it back on again. I don't know if this is the system just being weird, so I'm going to just do F11 to select boot drive. Well, I think I was a bit too late. There you go, Debian. I can select Debian. It's starting to load the kernel. It says it's loading RAM disk, so it's on the hard drive for sure. And it never turns the screen on. I've left it on for over an hour. So I'm guessing there's just something weird with how Debian uses graphics drivers. So I'm going to go try another distro. I'm going to try like Ubuntu. Ubuntu 14.04, older version, should run fine on the slower hardware, and it's 32-bit, which I need, and I don't think 20.04 is 32-bit. I just had the ISO, I wanted to give this one a shot. So I'm going to just try it without installing, because it works on the live disk. It probably works when it's installed. I don't know though, I've seen a lot of weird stuff. I do know Linux has some hardware issues sometimes where it won't initialize the monitor correctly during boot up. But normally it works once it finishes booting, but that's odd. The other weird thing was the installer works perfectly. And that was really stumping me. This is an odd issue. So, Linux never seemed to be able to get the display to work right. Older versions worked okay. Still wasn't great. I got the touchscreen drivers working on Windows, and it doesn't seem to have the same issue on Windows while waking up. I needed the drivers from ELO for this device. Apparently it's using a touchscreen from them, and now it works fine. It's still very poor, but it is a resistive touchscreen. So that means it's pressure sensitive, so I can do basically the same scrolling with a pen, whereas if I use a capacitive touchscreen on a phone, it doesn't work. The other thing is gloves work quite well, which is useful for some of these devices. Whereas it's pretty good on a phone, but capacitive touchscreens really struggle, especially with thicker ones, whereas resistive ones do fine, which is why you see them normally for more rugged environments. So I've taken out all the screws I can see, the two on the side that hold on the fingerprint reader and the credit card or just card scanner, then these 6 at the bottom, and then the foot at the back. And it seems to be able to just kind of lift off. I don't see anything at the top that'd be stopping it, but it doesn't want to just pull out. Oh, there it goes. And the first thing I noticed is it's actually using the back as a heatsink, so there's some sort of like thermal pad or paste stuff here that's holding it on. And then underneath, here's the actual board. So yeah, the screen is on the bottom right here. It looks like an LED backlit panel. We can see under this big heatsink here with its little thermal pad is probably the CPU. I don't know what else could be under there. We got those 4 gigs of DDR3 1600 in here. Not too bad. We have, this looks like the touch controller here for the display right here. And it's a little kind of 5 cables for the XY connections. We see the little chipset here for the Atom. What looks like either like a MPCIe for Wi-Fi card here. We see the power breakouts for the board, and it's a pretty simple little board. Only other weird thing is it looks like a PCIe slot, but definitely isn't. I wonder what that's for. There's probably some other use for some card or something slots in here that might have PCIe or something else on it. Not really too much to say inside these. These are fairly simple little boxes inside. So